was the dietitian for JTA. The dietitian for JTA or at SAISD since 2018. So I was here coming in person even prior to this building being here in downtown. And so it's great to be back. Today, our topic is going to be manage your stress to protect your heart. Even if you don't have any heart health issues, this is still a really important topic because most everybody has some kind of stress, right? I know even in the school world, whether you're in the admin side, whether you're a teacher, whether you're, whatever role you might have in the school district, it's been a lot of changes in the last 2 years. And I know most people's workload has increased. And so, this will hopefully give you a lot of really good tips on how to manage that stress that you might have throughout the week, throughout the month, right? To, not have that stress bubble over. At JTA, we use the analogy of a bar stool. Some of you might recognize this from our appointments. And that bar stool represents a healthy, balanced lifestyle, with the legs of the stool being healthy eating, good quality sleep, exercise on a regular basis, and manage stress. And of course, today, we're going to be focusing on stress. But one thing that I do like to say is that if any of these are not well managed, right? It tends to throw off the other legs of the stool and we end up with a wobbly bar stool. So we want to have good balance with all 4 of these aspects. And that's something that really drew me to JTA back in 2017 when I joined, that we didn't just focus on the eating component. Yes, this is super healthy and, I'm a dietitian. We talk about food a lot, but it's not the only component of good health and wellness. So what is stress? I think it's important to define it since this is what the presentation is about, right? It's an involuntary physical and psychological response to a stressor. So there's 2 things I want you to focus on in this definition. One, it's involuntary, meaning we don't choose to be stressed, right? Like we don't want to be stressed. So that's very important. And then the second is that it's physical and psychological, meaning that it presents in the brain and in the body. So it's both. Since the beginning of time, we have a life-saving mechanism called fight or flight, right? We probably all have heard about this or familiar with this, right? So if you were ever to encounter something dangerous like a scary bear, we would be able to either fight it or run away, right? Of course, in real life or everyday life, we are not typically running away from bears or saber-toothed tigers, right? And so, we tend to have some different sources of stress, right? We tend to have stress from finances, from work, seeming like we have a never-ending to-do list, right? Like that to-do list is never getting shorter. Feeling like we're constantly connected to our devices, which, by the way, social media and apps and things like Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter and things like that, they're meant to kind of cause you to want to use them more, right? Facebook and things like that. So feeling like you can't ever get off your phone. Having the stress of maybe family members. I know I have a lot of patients that they help take care of their parents or grandparents. Social life, right? Like feeling like you want to do everything plus have a very great social life as well. Relationships, the safety of you and people that you love, and health concerns as well, which at JTA, we tend to have a lot of patients coming in because they are concerned about their health. So when we are in that fight or flight mode, we do have some short-term effects of stress. So initially our pupils are going to dilate. And that's so that we can see better, right? Like if there was danger present, it would be important that we could see really well in that moment that it's, it's a life or death type of situation, right? Our saliva decreases, right? We're not salivating because we're not trying to eat in that moment. And also our digestive enzymes decrease because of course, if you were to be running from a bear, you would need to be digesting food in that moment, right? We are going to have more shallow, deep breaths. So if you've ever been stressed and you feel like, oh man, I'm not breathing very, very well, it's because we're trying to take in short breaths, a lot of air so that we can get some energy to the muscles, right? The muscles tend to start tensing up. So that way we could run or fight something if we needed to. And then our blood vessels dilate to cause our blood pressure to increase. So again, we have more blood flowing throughout the body so that we can, get that blood to the muscles. We also, this is another one we tend to experience and a lot of people can feel familiar with is like chills and sweating, right? Like if we're really stressed or nervous, we might start kind of like, shaking or getting the chills or sweating as well. So how are stress and heart health related? I know we did have some pre-submitted questions and somebody was like, how does stress relate to heart health, right? And that's part of what this presentation is about. So they are related. And evidence is growing that physiological factors like stress are literally heartfelt and can greatly increase cardiac risk such as heart attacks. So we definitely don't want that, right? It can seem like, oh, I'm just a little stressed here and I'm a little stressed there. And like work has been a little bit more busy or, maybe there's been stressors in my family life. And maybe I'm a little stressed about finances and things like that. But over time, this can cause some damage. And so here are some examples of that. So the Women's Health Study found that women whose work is highly stressful has a 40% increased risk of heart disease. In a 2010 report, researchers found rates of heart attacks increased as the stock market crashed from September 2008 to March of 2009. And I know stock market hasn't been so great in recent times either. The Nurses Health Study found women who cared for disabled spouses for at least 9 hours a week were significantly more at risk for having a heart attack or dying from heart disease. And, and I think that could also be related to somebody, not even a disabled spouse, but like a family member that maybe lives at home with you as well. And then following the terrorist attacks of 9/11, researchers found that individuals with high levels of stress were 2 times as likely to develop hypertension, which is also known as high blood pressure, and more than 3 times as likely to develop heart problems in the following 2 years than those with low stress levels. So that's not to scare you, but it does give some evidence that there is a link between the two. So what are the long-term effects of stress? We know what happens if in the moment we're really stressed, something's about to happen. And it doesn't have to be a bear, right? It could be a work deadline, something unexpected happened that, it's a fire you have to put out in the moment for the day that you weren't expecting to be dealing with today. But when stress is long-term, it can cause, as we already talked about, serious heart problems. It can also lead to tension, headaches, and migraines. And then it can lead to mental health problems as well as like depression and anxiety, trouble breathing, hyperventilation, and panic attacks, skin and hair conditions like acne and hair loss. It does increase our risk for type 2 diabetes, and it can also lead to fertility problems in men and women. I don't know if you've ever heard of somebody when they're trying to get pregnant and they're like, as soon as we stopped trying or stopped thinking about it, finally they got pregnant because they were so stressed about getting pregnant that eventually, they stopped thinking about it, they stopped stressing about it, and then finally they could. And so, and again, like part of that goes back to like the body is not trying to do these secondary type of things that are not as important if you were in a life or death situation, right? Same thing, like digestion might not be so great if we're constantly stressed. And I do have a lot of patients that come with digestive issues. And one thing that I think a lot of people don't think about when they're having like all kinds of digestive issues is, how is your stress level? Are you managing it well? Because maybe that's not the only thing that's causing digestive issues, but it could be one factor. So I want to ask you a couple questions, right? When you are stressed, do you eat to calm down, speak and eat very fast, drink alcohol or smoke, rush around but don't get much done, work too much, procrastinate, sleep too little, too much, or both, slow down, try to do too many things at once? If so, if you said yes to any of these, maybe you're not managing stress as well as you could. I know for myself, something that can happen to me when I feel like, oh my gosh, I have too many things and I don't know where to start. I feel like sometimes I shut down, it's like, I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to just procrastinate. This can happen to me on the weekend at home when I'm doing the house chores. It's like, I'm just going to turn on the TV. I'm just going to sit and relax, right? The dishes and the laundry can wait, but that doesn't get my to-do list done, right? And so we want to find some methods to help work with that stress so that, what happens is if I do get the laundry done, if I do get a clean kitchen, if I do get a work assignment done, my stress level actually decreases, right? The other day, actually, my husband and I are not good at opening email. It's like our nemesis. But the other day we spent 10 minutes. Both of us worked on our mail and we did it for 10 minutes. It was like, we can do this, okay? Let's sit and open our mail and our bills and all of that, right? And I felt so much better. It was 10 minutes, okay? And it was so much better. So this thing that I had been avoiding, I was like, if we did this every couple of days for a couple of minutes, we could get this done and not think about this all week, right? So that's important, right? Like, are we holding on to things because we're not getting them done or we're not dealing with them well? So there's actually two types of stress. The first is the helpful kind of stress. It's called eustress. And there's another type of stress called distress, and that's actually the unhelpful kind of stress. So helpful stress or eustress does not last over long periods of time. It's not a long-term thing, right? It can actually act as a motivator to help you focus and get things done more efficiently. And it provides an opportunity for creativity and growth. So like, I give an example of like, I tend to do the best when I have a deadline, right? Like if, you probably can get that from my little story from earlier, but like if I have a deadline, I get some good ideas and I can get it done. If there's no deadline, I don't really have to do this right now. I can wait until later, right? So that actually helps me to have that deadline because I know I have to get something done and it motivates me to get it done, right? However, distress is the type of stress that's reoccurring. It lasts for long periods of time and it manifests itself physically and emotionally. We already talked about some of the physical manifestations of stress. It also reduces productivity and creativity. So this is not a helpful type of stress. Of course, we can't get rid of all types of stress, right? Like we can't just say, we're gonna have zero stress. That's not realistic. But we wanna manage our current stress. We also wanna prevent future stress from getting out of hand. And we also wanna prevent health complications like heart disease that can result from stress, right? So we want to be able to manage that. So the first tip for managing stress is physical activity. And we know that physical activity just in general is good for our health overall, right? It helps boost feel-good endorphins in the brain. I always think of Elle Woods, right? Like we tend to feel a lot better after we do some kind of movement. It also acts as a form of meditation. It's relaxing. I know for me, sometimes there's times where I'm like, I don't really want to go today, but after my class, I feel so much more relaxed and more ready to go to bed, right? I'm more calm, and I get a better sleep that night, which means I'm going to have a better day the next day. So it does kind of help relax. I think especially like yoga, which I'll give some resources for yoga at the end and some other different types of exercises. But I always think yoga really helps you come in tune with your breathing and your body, right? One of the things that I've had a couple different instructors for yoga, but they tend to talk about like, how's your breathing right now? Because sometimes you're exercising and you realize like, I've been holding my breath this whole time, right? So it helps you kind of focus in on your breathing, that it's slow and it's steady, and you're listening to your body. You know, how are my muscles feeling? How is my legs? I always love at the end of yoga, if you've ever taken a yoga class, you tend to kind of lay at the end of the class and just kind of like listen to like how your muscles are. And if you feel like there's any part of your body that's tense, you want to just unclench the jaw and, relax the muscles and things so that you do feel totally calm and relaxed. So it is a form of meditation. I know a lot of people who walk or run also feel like that's my me time. That's when I feel like I can get away and just kind of focus on the steps and the movement and nature. It improves your mood. It's until you do it on a regular basis, you really can't. You don't know that feeling, but it does help improve the mood so much. And it improves sleep quality. And when we're sleeping better, we feel better the next day. So, so many benefits to exercise. So what are the recommendations for exercise? We're aiming for at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week. Moderate aerobic activity is going to be things like a good paced walk, a swim, things like that are going to be not super high intense. Vigorous is going to be something like running, right? It's a higher heart rate. The American Heart Association has a really good article. If you look up heart rate with the American Heart Association, they do kind of tell you what are those heart rate zones that you're aiming for this moderate and high level activity. So it is a little bit lower a recommendation for that vigorous and a little bit higher for the moderate. And a lot of people might think like, oh my gosh, 150 minutes, I'm doing 0 right now. That's a lot. But if you break it down to 30 minutes for 5 days, that's not as bad, right? And even think of this, if you're not meeting this now is the future goal, right? So even if you started with 10 minutes, right? Something small, something very doable that you're like, I can for sure do this. Kind of like me with 10 minutes of mail, right? Like I can handle 10 minutes of mail, right? I have time for it. I'm going to feel better, right? Maybe I don't want to do it right now, but I felt a lot better after. Same thing with the exercise. However, it helps if you like what you're doing, right? So I do want you to really kind of, try some different things. If you're like, I just really don't enjoy exercise, try some different things. I have patients that rollerblade, very kind of unconventional type of exercise, but how much fun. I'm like, that reminds me of my childhood. I didn't discover I liked yoga until I took a class in college. And then really, I didn't take too many there, but then I took some when I was studying, when I was doing my master's, they had some classes at Incarnate Word. And then I started doing more at Gold's Gym. They had a yoga class. And so that's where I really developed a love for yoga. I also like to do barre, which is a combination of ballet, Pilates, and yoga. So that is really enjoyable because I love that they have fun music and the instructors are there going to be pushing me, right? So you might have to try some different things. Right now, there's been a lot of rain, so a lot of people are maybe spending more time in their yard. And so that counts, right? If you're like lifting things, that's going to be exercise, or you're pushing the mower or pulling and things like that, that will count as exercise. And the other thing that's going to be recommended is at least twice a week of strength training exercises. So what is strength training? Well, cardio is something that gets your heart rate up, right? So that's cardio. Strength training is anything that puts resistance on your muscles. So think like free weights, resistance bands, own body weight exercises, things like crunches or planks or wall sits or lunges and things like that. Or it could be using machines, or things like maybe like you have hills in your neighborhood, or you're using the stairs a lot. Maybe you work upstairs, right? If you're using the stairs, that counts as strength training as well. Another form of stress management is going to be sleep, right? Sleep is kind of like a vicious cycle. If you don't get enough sleep, you tend to be more stressed during the day. And then when you're more stressed, you don't tend to sleep well. And so it kind of is like a cycle, but it also works in reverse. You get enough sleep, you tend to be less stressed during the day. Why? Because it's easier to handle things during the day, right? You're not like, I'm sure you've run into somebody where you're like, okay, they're like, their last fuse, right? They don't have, maybe they haven't gotten enough sleep or something's going on at home, right? We want to make sure that we can handle the day as best as possible, and sleep is going to be super important for that. Sleep also helps with calming chronic inflammation, and so many diseases like diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver, kidney disease, a lot of those are really related to inflammation. And that's a lot of times, a lot of people are coming to JTA and they're like, I really want to be on like an anti-inflammatory type diet, right? You hear that even maybe from your doctors. Because inflammation plays such a big role in health diseases. Again, sleep helps improve mood if we're getting enough. It also increases energy and our ability to deal with life's challenges. So there's different recommendations based on your age, but for adults, the recommended amount is 7 to 9 hours a night. Some people do okay with 6, but not most. And some people need as much as 10, which is, quite a bit, but not most, right? But most adults need 7 to 9 hours a night. I'll give y'all a really good resource I've been using lately that has been really helpful for kind of keeping track of that. A couple other tips for better sleep. I have a lot of patients that will say like, I feel like when it's bedtime, I'm thinking about everything I have to do and it's hard to shut my brain off, right? One thing that can really help with that is writing things down or journaling. Sometimes we just got to get it out, and just writing on paper what's going on in our lives. We're saying, okay, I'm going to write everything down, because at this point in time, obviously, like, it's not the time, right? It's not going to get done right now. I need to just put it on paper. No, I'm not going to forget about it and leave it till tomorrow, right? Like at this point in time at 10 o'clock at night or 11, it's not going to happen, right? Or you could happen, but I'm not going to have a great day tomorrow if I'm really tired, right? So journaling or writing down those persistent thoughts or even to-do lists. Do a short meditation or breathing exercise before bed. And I think even to say here that like even prayer or Bible reading can act as that meditation. It's a spiritual form of meditation. I'll give a couple apps that are really good for meditation exercises. If you've never tried it, I never had done meditation until a couple years ago. I was like, what is this? It sounds very like, I don't know, very hippie, but it's actually, I think more people are doing it. And like I said, even if you're religious or spiritual and you pray or you read the Bible and things like that, that's actually a form of meditation. Exercise daily. We already talked about exercise, but super important for sleep as well. I know for me, when I do go to my exercise classes, I tend to sleep a lot better that night. And then avoid overconsumption of caffeine and alcohol. One thing I will say is that caffeine has a really long half-life. It takes a long time for your body to get rid of caffeine. So I've heard like somewhere between like 6 to even as long as 10 hours. So I like to recommend no caffeine in the afternoon time. So kind of cutting it off either early afternoon or late morning, because even if you can fall asleep with caffeine in your system, I have so many patients that have told me, Christine, I can have a cup of coffee right before bed and I sleep just fine. It's like, I looked into that a couple years ago because I was like, there has to be something to this, right? I don't know if this is healthy or not. And sure enough, they've done studies on it. And even if you can fall asleep, right? Even if you don't get jittery or it doesn't keep you awake, it disrupts your deep sleep. And so then you don't get a good quality of sleep when you're sleeping. And I actually had recently a patient who was doing, she was having Diet Dr. Peppers throughout the day. And, it wasn't like no calories, but she was having caffeine, and she was even having it some at dinner, like lunch and throughout the afternoon. And she discontinued, I don't remember if she discontinued completely or she at least kind of stopped drinking it in the afternoon. And she was like, it took a little while, but my sleep is so much better, right? Like she didn't notice it the first night, but she did notice over time, she felt like her sleep was really improved. And I think the same thing with alcohol, right? And that a lot of people are like, well, alcohol makes me sleepy, right? If I have a glass of wine or something, like it helps me fall asleep. But same thing, it's not a good quality of sleep that we're getting. Establish a relaxing nighttime routine. I know that for myself, if I say, oh shoot, it's time for bed and I need to get in bed now because my bedtime is like in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, I'm stressed, right? I'm like, oh no, I'm going to go to bed late and then I'm going to be tired tomorrow, right? Versus if I start getting ready for bed 30 minutes before, like at least 20, right? Where I give myself some time to, take off the makeup, get changed, maybe pop open a book and read for a little bit, right? Just kind of relax. That really helps me go to sleep more easily, right? And just to kind of have a good night's rest. So maybe if you don't have a routine, that's a good one to establish. And it could be turning down the lights in the evening. I think that's an easy one that we can all do. Like instead of having the main lights in the house, turning those down, using lamps or like lower lighting in the kitchen and things like that in the bedroom as well, so that it's not really harsh lighting. And you can kind of tell your body, right, okay, we're getting closer to bedtime. So that is a really good one that can make a big difference. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule. This is for the week and the weekend. I'm still working on the weekend because sometimes that one's a hard one where you're like, oh, I could stay up a little bit later or sleep in a little bit more. That can be tough for a lot of people, but you don't want to like wake up more than about an hour or compared to your usual wake up time. And same thing with your bedtime. So that is really helpful for your circadian rhythm to be just kind of better. Sometimes people kind of have such a big difference in their sleep habits on the weekend that they go into the week and they're like, even though I slept a lot, I don't feel super rested. And part of that, I actually just learned this more recently, but like part of that is because you're sleeping into the zone where you were normally kind of hitting your energy zone. And so if you're sleeping into that zone a little bit longer on the weekend, then you wake up and your energy zone is a lot smaller, right? Where you're like, I slept in, but like, I don't feel too energized. So that's kind of how that plays a role. You do also want to avoid electronics at least 30 minutes before bed. And I've actually seen where it could be even as much as 2 hours. And part of that is because our electronics emit blue light. I'm sure y'all have heard of that before. We're not exactly sure if like, how on the iPhone, and I don't know if other phones do this too, but where you can kind of have it where it's like more of a reddish tint to your screen in the evening. We're not too sure if that's helpful or not. It might be, but we don't have enough research on it to know, okay, if that is helpful or not. But the best thing is at least, closer to bedtime, turn off the phone or set it to the side, put it down. And if you are reading, try and read an actual book. Because even sometimes I have a tablet for reading, but even the tablet can emit a blue light. You can, some devices do sell, you can find like a blue light screen where it blocks the blue light. So that's an option. Or another little hack, you can do blue light glasses as well. So those are a couple hacks that you can use. And then also eating a balanced diet, including a light bedtime snack if you're hungry. And you do want to have something light. You don't want to have something really heavy before bed, but if you are hungry, something balanced like a piece of whole grain toast with some nut butter on it, like some peanut butter or almond butter or something like that. Something really light. For my diabetic patients, I like to say no carbs before bedtime or pre-diabetes patients because carb raises your blood sugar. So you have to be careful with that. In that case, you would want to do something that's more of a protein or a fat. So something like peanut butter and celery sticks, or like some cheese and nuts or something like that. The Two Good yogurt is a lower carb yogurt, so that's kind of a sweeter snack in the evening. And of course, being a dietitian, we have to talk about food, right? At JTA, we can really help you develop more an individualized plan in an appointment. So we can help with balancing your meals and your snacks, making sure that you have a good amount of the variety of nutrients, and then helping with portions based on your height, weight, age, gender, physical activity, and what your goals are. But these are a couple of stress busting foods that can help, help with that stress. All carbohydrates provide a steady supply of serotonin, which is that like feel-good hormone. But complex carbohydrates are more slow digesting because they have more fiber. Think like whole grain, whole wheat, like whole wheat pasta, brown rice, quinoa, things like that. Even like something like a potato is starchy veggie, but it has a lot of fiber. So those tend to be more of a steady stream of serotonin because they have fiber, which slows down digestion. Oranges provide vitamin C, which are good for the immune system. So that's important too. And a lot of times we think like citrus is a good source of vitamin C, which it is, right? Grapefruit, lemon, lime, oranges. However, bell peppers are a great source of vitamin C, strawberries, broccoli, and then just, like fresh fruits and vegetables in general. Spinach is rich in magnesium. So many people are really interested in magnesium lately. I think that's been like a more hot topic in the nutrition world. But we can get magnesium from food too. We don't have to get a supplement. But magnesium helps ease the effects of stress. And so one really easy way of incorporating some spinach into your diet, maybe you don't love salads, you can throw a little bit in your smoothie. You don't even have to put enough to make it green, but just like a little bit. I had a patient one time that she did not like any vegetables at all. And I convinced her to put a little bit of spinach in her smoothie and she was like, I can't even taste it, I'm fine doing that, right? So it's a really good way to kind of get some veggies in at breakfast time. Fatty fish, these are really high in omega-3 fatty acids, and omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. And so they also help prevent surges in stress hormones as well. Some other good sources of omega-3 plant sources, if you don't eat fish, are going to be walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp hearts or hemp seeds are another good source as well. And then one of my coworkers always likes to use the acronym SMASH. I don't know if y'all have heard of that before, but it's a good way to remember which seafood is high in omega-3. So it's going to be salmon, mackerel, anchovy, sardine, and herring. Cod is also a good source of omega-3 as well when it comes to seafood. And tuna is going to have a good amount, but not as much as salmon. Black tea. It does have a calming effect and it can help aid recovery from stressful events more quickly. It actually helps reduce your stress hormone cortisol. But because it has caffeine, keep it earlier in the day. And if you're going to do something in the evening, do a decaf tea like chamomile tea or something like that, or even like a sleepy time tea is really helpful for the evening. And I think even too, just like the act of drinking something warm is really calming. So that also in the evening can be a good part of like an evening night routine. Pistachios have healthy fats that can help lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and protect against the effects of stress, and just healthy like nuts in general, nuts and seeds. The best nuts and seeds to choose when you're buying them at the store is dry roasted, if they're roasted, or just natural or raw. So plain. And go ahead. Smash is salmon, anchovies, or salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. And I have to think about it too. But nuts and seeds in general are really healthy. So like I said, if you're going to choose a nut or seed to buy as a snack or part of the meal, choose natural or raw. If they're roasted, dry roasted. Meaning they're roasted without any oils. And if we're trying to manage our weight, being careful with a portion because they're super healthy, but if we overdo it, right, if we're eating a whole bag of nuts, it's a lot of calories. So we just have to be careful with that. Avocado, I think a lot of times we think bananas are really high in potassium, and they are, but avocado is another good source of potassium as well. And potassium helps reduce high blood pressure. I don't know if y'all have heard of the DASH diet. Maybe your doctor has mentioned it, but that's kind of like one of the most well-researched diets for high blood pressure for people with high blood pressure, like pre-hypertension as well, where they're like not considered hypertension, but almost. And one of the big components of it is this high potassium diet. So a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. So it's like a lot of times I tell my patients, like, these recommendations I'm making, it's nothing crazy, right? It's probably stuff you already know, but this is the science behind it. So that potassium in those fresh fruits and vegetables and foods like avocado are really going to help manage that high blood pressure or prevent it, right? And then almonds, again, going back to the nuts and seeds, almonds have many vitamins, including vitamin E, which is helpful in the immune system. And it also has B vitamins, which are helpful to combat stress. Raw veggies, those help kind of more in a mechanical way, right? So think like when you're crunching on celery or baby carrots or something, like it's helping ease that jaw tension. So there's kind of a mechanical way of warding off stress. Milk, the calcium in milk can help ease anxiety and mood swings linked to PMS. And then lastly, we talked about the bedtime snack earlier. A little bit of carbohydrate before bedtime can help release that serotonin to have a better sleep at night. And then lastly, a couple other ways to manage your stress. A lot of people are emotional eaters. It's a way to, and everybody does it, right? But when it's out of control, that's where it's against what our health goals are usually. Like usually we want to be healthy, right? But if it's going against what our goals are for our health, right, that's no longer a healthy coping skill, right? So we want to find some alternatives. So instead of like, I'm stressed and I'm eating potato chips or I'm having sweets after dinner, okay, maybe I need to get out of the kitchen and go for a walk, right? Maybe it's time to get ready for bed, right? Maybe I need to change, or maybe I need to take a warm bath, right? You know what your coping mechanisms are, right? Like, what helps you feel less stressed. I think maybe for men, like my male patients, right? It might be a little different. It might not be getting your nails done or something like that, or taking a bath, right? It might be like, I had a patient that told me the other day, his ways of de-stressing is like, he likes to sit in the deer blind at his ranch, right? And be out in nature and just kind of be there in the quiet. He likes working on his cars. That's what helps him feel less stressed. So everybody might be a little different. I don't know, working on a car would make me less stressed, but that was his coping mechanism, right? That was something that helped him. So finding like what works for you and applying those and having different options based on like what you can do in the moment. I even have like, at work, I do a lot of video calls. So like sometimes I'm not typing and I'm just kind of sitting there listening. I have putty that I can just like put in my hand and just squeeze during the call, that I can just kind of relax my hands and just ease tension and stress throughout the day. So that helps me because I can't just like walk, get up and go for a walk in the middle of an appointment, right? So it just depends, and probably you may not be able to do that while you're working, in the middle of the day or something like that. So the other one is implement time management skills. If you feel like you're waking up last minute and you're running around the house and you're always running late, maybe trying to put the wake up time a little bit earlier so you're less stressed in the morning, because then you start the day so much better, right? Same thing with nighttime. Maybe trying not to go to bed so late or having some more time in the evening just to kind of wind down. Incorporate mindful activities into your daily routine. So this could be even, I have so many patients that are like, Christine, I don't have time for all this. I'm like busy. I've got 2 jobs. I have a family. I take care of my parent, whatever it might be. They have too many things going on. But we all have time to stop and breathe. Everybody has time to pause and breathe, right? So even if you didn't have time for yoga, or you didn't have time for a bath in the evening, or to read a book, or whatever it might be, we all have time to breathe. So that could be even something that you can incorporate some mindfulness into the day. And then practice self-care. And again, it depends on what helps you feel like you're taking care of yourself, right? I think especially parents tend to, or like even if you're a caregiver for a relative, that you tend to fall last on the list. Right? But I like to use the analogy of when you're on an airplane and they tell you like, whenever, if you were to lose oxygen, when those little masks come down, you put yours on first, right? You're not putting it on your child or your spouse or the person next to you. You put it on you, because if you can't breathe, you can't help the person next to you put on their mask, right? And I think that applies to life as well. If our cup is running dry or empty, how can we expect to help other people? And I know everybody in this room, their job is helping other people too, right? And so, and you probably have family members and friends that you're there for. So we cannot, it sounds selfish to say like, I got to take care of me, but it's not selfish in the long run, because when you take care of you, it helps you better take care of others. So hopefully that kind of helps. So I want to do a little breathing exercise real quick before we, getting close to the end of the presentation. I want everybody to close your eyes for a second. So close your eyes and take a deep breath through your nose. And then I want you to hold that breath in. So don't breathe out just yet. And now slowly breathe out through your mouth. So breathe in through your nose, hold it, and breathe out through your mouth. Okay, and I want you to do it again one more time. So breathe in, hold, and breathe out slowly. And even when you can open your eyes now. But I like the act of closing your eyes, because you get rid of external stimuli. You can do this even at your desk, or before you get out of the car in the morning, or before you get into traffic in the afternoon, right? You can take a second to pause and breathe. And even when I show somebody that for a couple breaths, it's maybe like 2 or 3 breaths that I'll show them. And I'm like, wow, I feel better now too, and it was 2, 3 breaths. That's it. It brings down your heart rate and it helps you relax, right? And then keep going. Everybody has time for that. So a couple of resources, because I want to make sure you'll have some different resources that can be helpful. And I'm glad that you'll have the slides, because then you can take this home with you. And if you're online, you can take a screenshot or a picture with your phone. So these are a couple apps. I have used them all. So I want to make sure I recommended things that I've personally used and really enjoyed. So during the pandemic, I got free access to Calm and Headspace. Those, if you've ever used them, they're really great for mindfulness activities. They even have some like exercise activities in there. They have a really good, like Calm has a really nice like breathing bubble that you can just pop up on you can find it on YouTube for free too. But it really helps you just kind of, I know some people, if you have an iWatch, there's a little breathing bubble on there. So that is really helpful, because it just helps you focus on something. Again, it's mindfulness with the body and the breath. Balance is one that one of my patients more recently, a couple months ago, recommended to me. They give you the first year free. So you don't pay anything for a year. And it's another mindfulness app that's super helpful as well. And then the last one, I mentioned I was going to give you something for sleep. This is one that my husband recommended a couple of months ago. He was like so frustrated. Christine, I already told you about this. Why haven't you downloaded it, right? He really wanted me to try it. And finally, I was like, okay, I'll do it. And it has been so helpful. I wish I would have used it sooner. But it helps to kind of figure out, like, based on your sleep habits, how much sleep do you need? I already mentioned we need like 7 to 9 hours. Based on like how much you sleep in when you can, when maybe you don't have to wake up at a certain time, it determines how much sleep you need. So like my sleep, like ultimate sleep time, or like perfect sleep amount of time is like 8 hours and 15 minutes or so. So it's determined that based on like a ton of data that I put in. It can actually pull data from your iPhone too. And so it also kind of uses something called sleep debt. So like if you're not reaching that, it kind of like gives you a certain amount of debt that you have that we want to like kind of avoid, getting too high in sleep debt. So that one has a lot of really good tips, and they have little articles in there that are helpful. This is actually a recommendation from one of my coworkers, JR. He has been using I don't know if anybody's familiar here with the You Need a Budget. They have a website. It's a software program for finances, and they have an app and a podcast and a YouTube channel. But he says he's been using this for 10 years. And I think this is a really good, like when I originally made this presentation, I didn't have anything on finance resources, but so many people are stressed because of their finances. So, I love that he gave that tip of this of this one. I haven't personally used it, but he's like a diehard fan. And then YouTube is free, which is so awesome, right? We don't have to pay for exercise if we don't want to. Yoga with Adriene is one that I've used for a long time. She actually has a playlist that's yoga for beginners. If you've never done yoga, that's a good place to start. Sarah Beth Yoga, again, she's been around for a long time. If you love to dance, there's free Zumba videos online too. Fitness Blender is a couple. They do HIIT workouts, and one of my patients was saying they're kind of like dry. So she likes to like put like fun music on in the background while she has the video on. So you can kind of put your own music that you like. And then Sean Big Fitness is one that one of my coworkers recommended more specifically for men. I know like Fitness Blender because it's like, you know, a couple. That one's also just for any gender. And then apps, there's a couple good ones. So Down Dog is good for yoga. Fit On, that one has a variety of different types of exercises. I have actually had several patients use the Fit On app and they really like it. And then they also have really short workouts. And then Yoga Go, another good app for yoga. And then lastly, a couple helpful resources for books that are good for stress. And my boss, Chelsea Marquez, recommended Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. So she said she read that a couple of years ago and she really enjoyed it. So if you have any more questions, you want a more personal approach, I do recommend setting up an appointment with us at JTA Wellness. We just added on a new dietitian. I think we're now like up to 8 or 9 dietitians. So there's a lot of dietitians you can meet with. I am going to put our website in just a second so you can read our bios and see, we all kind of do a little bit of everything, but we all have specialties as well. And we can kind of give you that one-on-one personal appointment. You can get a meal plan if that's something that you're interested in, and give you nutrition recommendations. We hear so much from family, friends, online, social media. It's good to make sure you know, right? Like these are legitimate, real, like, we're not confused. Is this real or not? You can have somebody that's a nutrition expert that can, tell you what the science is saying. And we base our recommendations based on your health concerns, your medical diagnoses, your health goals, what you like and don't like, right? Like I have patients that are like, I don't like cottage cheese. Okay, well, we won't put that in as, or I don't like, maybe I don't need it. I'm allergic to eggs. Okay, we'll work around that, right? That's important too. And then your lifestyle and your schedule. We have so many different types of patients. We have patients that have 1 job, 2 jobs, have a family, who are single, live in an apartment, live in a house, so many different types of circumstances, and we'll work around that as well. And insurance typically covers appointments at 100% with 0 copay. So if you're interested in that, we can give you more information. If you give our office a call, you can also send us an email to get you set up, or maybe you have seen a JTA dietitian and it's been a while. You can definitely, reach back out to set up an appointment again. So now I'll open up the floor to questions. I know I had some pre-submitted questions, and I believe I answered most of the pre-submitted questions, but I did have one that was regarding heart attack signs. So somebody had asked, like, what are some other signs of a heart attack? Because we were talking about heart health today. So I'll answer that one first, and then I'll let y'all ask any other questions you might have. So one is going to be, this is from the American Heart Association, pain or discomfort in the chest, lightheadedness, nausea or vomiting, jaw, neck, or back pain, discomfort or pain in the arm or shoulder, and shortness of breath. So hopefully that can kind of help answer that question that was pre-submitted. And I'll leave that up for a second. Did anybody else have any questions? Anything that you were kind of wondering about before the presentation and I didn't answer? Is there anything on the chat? How about, like, I would like to kind of open this up. I know we're almost at 1 o'clock, but like, is there anything that maybe you learned that was new or something that you would like to incorporate in? Because I always like to ask in my appointments, like, there's a lot of stuff that we talk about in appointments. I always like to ask, like, what is something that you can take away from today or something that you would like to work on, if anybody is willing to share? Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. Playing with your pets. My sister's school, when she was in high school, they used to bring dogs during final exam times. I'm like, I wish they would have done that at my school. So they could, and I know they do that on some college campuses as well. But how fun, right? To play with like your pet. Even like, if you do have a dog or an animal that can be walked, even just walking your dog. The dog needs to be walked and it gives you I always make the joke that my dog is walking me. But it does kind of get me outside and, there's even when those days where I'm like, tired. I just want to relax, right? I'm done with the work day. I got a lot done, and I just want to sit down, right, and just relax. But I feel so much better when I do go out for that walk, and I get a little movement before my day is over and before we make dinner and eat. And so even that, I love that idea. Thanks so much for sharing. Is there anybody else that would like to share something? Or even if there's any apps or resources that have been helpful for you to manage your stress that you would like to share? Tony, if you have anything. Yeah. I love it. So what is it called again? I want to repeat that so for the people online. Tranquil by Tuesday. And who is it by? Okay, Tranquil by Tuesday book was recommended. I love that. I'm gonna have to check it out. I always love self-help books, so I'll have to add that one to my reading list. But I love that. I think I'm a big fan of like baby steps, right? Like we don't have to change the world in a week between today and Sunday, but even small baby steps in the right direction make a huge difference, because maybe that like one extra glass of water or extra 15 minutes of bedtime or wake up 15 minutes earlier to get a walk in on a regular basis. They don't seem like much, but over time it makes a huge difference and it compounds, right? So yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for sharing. Oh, nice. Meditation music on YouTube. That's nice too. Sometimes when I'm doing I can't always listen to music with words when I'm working, but I can usually put on some classical music or spa music when I'm working, and that's okay. I can still work and it's something peaceful and calming. So that's a really good one too. Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you so much for coming today. I know you took time out of your day to come. I hope you got some good ideas and tips. And we look forward to having you at our next presentation. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.